All right. If everyone can go ahead and click the English interpretation, there's an interpretation button on the bottom of your screen, and you're going to want to choose English. Okay, April, let's go ahead and get started.
Thank you so much. Okay, folks, we're going to get started now. For those who are just joining, my name is April Sims. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a proud board member for One America Votes sister organization. And I'm also the secretary treasurer for the Washington State Labor Council AFL-CIO. And as the first Black woman and Black person elected as a WSLC executive officer, I'm passionate about women of color stepping into leadership. And I'm so happy to be with you all tonight, standing together to support women of color who are rising to even greater leadership in our communities. It's important to remember that wherever you are right now, you are on Native land. For One America, we are on Duwamish land, the traditional people of Seattle. And we honor that land and the Duwamish and Coast Salish people who are our neighbors, friends, and family today. Mine is a legacy of stolen labor provided by stolen people on stolen land. So I raise my voice in the fight for Black liberation and the movement for Black lives. And if you'd like to see where you're located, we'll post a link in the chat from the Native Land Project. Thank you. Now tonight, we'll hear from some amazing speakers who can share what it means to support women of color rising. We'll also hear from candidates who have been endorsed by One America Votes by breaking into groups to get to know the candidates and each other through conversation. We'll have a chance to donate and volunteer to support their campaigns through One America Votes and One America Votes Justice Fund, which is One America's statewide political action committee that elects progressive, pro-immigrant candidates to office. But before we get to all that, I want to take a moment and tell you just a little bit about myself. I grew up on the hilltop in Tacoma, and I'm a proud lifelong resident of this gritty city. But what I most want you to know is that it was my mom's union job that got our family off of welfare and gave her economic dignity for the first time. And it was her union pension that allowed her to retire with financial stability, and she is living her best life right now. So I know firsthand the difference being able to join a union makes in the lives of workers, families, and communities. It's that knowledge that drives my service in the labor movement, and that knowledge that drives my vision for the movement we can create together. As a Black family deeply impacted by racism, my family migrated from the violence of the segregated South to make a living and in the hopes of a better life. And while I know my story isn't the same story as my immigrant friends, neighbors, and workers, I also know that we share so much. Our struggles are linked, and so too is our freedom. So One America and One America Votes works to bring all people of color together across racial solidarity to fight for policies that will make our lives better. Last summer, my friend and fellow board member, Shukri Olo, told her story, a story about how a Black woman helped her realize her Black identity as a refugee. It was a raw and transformational moment. She helped bring immigrant communities, especially Black immigrants, into greater solidarity, demanding justice in the midst of the uprising for Black lives. Because we came together last year and elected a historic slate of progressive, pro-immigrant candidates of color, especially Black women, we won big. We elected the most diverse legislature in Washington State's history, breaking down barriers for Black women. Our new progressive majority took major steps to make sure the rich paid their fair share by finally passing a capital gains tax. That's a tax on wealth that less than 1% of the most wealthy will pay, that funds critical services for all of us. We funded the Working Families Tax Credit so families get a break. And we expanded dual language programs and language access. And on top of it all, we won hundreds of millions of dollars in relief for undocumented community members who were cruelly excluded from support during the pandemic. But for all the progress we made, we know we have so much further to go. And so now Shukri and others like Hamdi Mohammed, Tashika Hasagawa, and many more have taken the step to run for office and represent us. So let's talk a minute about the endorsees. We are proud to endorse Dr. Shukri Olo for King County Council District 5. Now, for the past 14 years, she has worked directly in service to the residents of South King County on issues like housing, education, and human services. She understands and aligns with the values of immigrant communities as she herself is a refugee from Somalia. If Shukri is elected, she would be the first Black woman to win a county council seat in Washington state. She is committed to fighting for access to early learning and childcare for immigrants and families of color, ensuring resources are allocated for pivotal programs that would allow our families to flourish. We're also excited to endorse Hamdi Mohammed for Port of Seattle Commission, position 3. Hamdi is a dedicated community leader who has organized with One America for more than 10 years. She has a deep passion for serving on the Seattle port as the daughter of port workers and refugees from Somalia. Hamdi currently works as the policy advisor for King County Office of Equity and Social Justice, where she led a $1.5 million investment in a new market and housing development in Tukwila. She also previously worked as deputy director for One America's founder, U.S. Representative Pramila Jayapal. And right now, none of the current Seattle Port commissioners live in South King County. So Hamdi would make sure that South King County communities like hers are represented. And she would also be the first woman of color to be elected to the Port Commission. Now we're ready to throw down for Tashika Hasagawa, for Port of Seattle Commission 4. She's a fourth generation Japanese American and lifelong Seattle resident. She is the daughter of the labor movement and was shaped by her parents and community to value working in service for others. She was appointed the executive director of the Commission on Asian Pacific American Affairs. And if Tashika is elected, she would be the first Asian American woman to be elected to the Seattle Port Commission and would work for economic justice, language access, and environmental justice. One America Votes board members and leaders spent the last 2 months doing research on and interviewing candidates across the state of Washington to build a powerful slate of candidates that is majority women of color. I wish I had more time to talk about all the candidates at this event tonight and all of the candidates that we will be supporting. We're so excited about Iris Guzman for Seattle City Council, Lorena Gonzalez for Seattle Mayor, Teresa Mosqueda and Nikita Oliver for Seattle City Council, Vivian Song Martinez and Michelle Sarju for Seattle School Board, Barbara Robles for Ellensburg City Council, Graciela Villanueva for Yakima School Board, Jane Ares for Bellevue School Board, Trudy Davis for Federal Way School Board, Sarah Franklin for the Kent School Board, Brina Fincher for Kent City Council, Ruth Perez for Renton City Council, Diana Perez for Vancouver City Council, Sandra Valia Ortega for Vancouver School Board, and Yoshiko Grace Matsu for Des Moines City Council. The list is amazing. And while funds from this event are dedicated towards women and non-binary candidates of color, we are also supporting a number of other amazing candidates who are allies and deserve your vote. Those include Crystal Marks, Hugo Garcia and Jimmy Mata for Berrien City Council, Cliff Cawthorn for Kent City Council, Jake Simpson and Mohammed Eagle for SeaTac City Council, Armin Papayan, Mohammed Advi, and Deshaun Quinn for Tukwila City Council, and Dana Herrera for Yakima City Council. So let's show a little love in the chat for all of these incredible candidates who have taken the courageous step to run for office, sacrificing their families, jobs, and so much more to represent our communities, build power alongside us, and take bold action on the issues that matter most to our communities. And I am loving the love in the chat. So we come together tonight in struggle and in hope. We know our communities are still impacted by COVID, by racism, by police violence, and by the harm we still need to undo to our immigration system, which was never built for us. But we're thinking bigger than ever. It's time to not just undo the harm, but to create new, just systems that work for our communities. The only way to get what we want, a progressive, pro-immigrant society that keeps us all healthy and safe, is to radically change who's representing us in office. For too long, our leaders have been male, pale, and stale. But here in Washington, we're making great progress. We know that power is not given or owned. It is built when we invest in community. When we come together to take what we know, what we feel, our anger, our pain, our knowledge, our resilience, we turn it into action by coming together, moving together, being joyful together, and rising together. So I want you to take a moment and think about what is bringing you here today. What is angering or inspiring you? And share that in the chat. Because when we rise together, we become our own liberators. We make powerful change in our schools, our communities, and our government by electing people like us to office. We find our freedom together. So I want to thank all the folks who are building this movement, our amazing co-hosts who brought us all together. Take a look at the slide and you'll see the powerful principled leadership we have here. Many of them are serving as conversation hosts tonight, leading our breakout rooms where we'll be connecting and talking with candidates. All of them are amazing and contributing to our communities in ways that demonstrate the power of women of color leading. A number of allies supported this movement because they too understand that our fates are intertwined. So I want to thank them for acting in solidarity. Thanks to One America Votes board and staff. Without them, this wouldn't be possible. And thanks to every single person who joined tonight for your generosity and your solidarity in this moment. Now, up next, we'll hear from One America Votes board member Jasmine Marwa about the history of this event. Jasmine, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. Thanks, April. I'm so honored to be here tonight for the 5th annual Women of Color Rise event. 4 years ago, think back all the way to 2017, let's just say there was not a lot of hope in politics at the national level. And it was a time when One America and One America Votes were doing a lot of defensive work. But we were also trying to carve out space, a space of hope, of support, and of movement building. With the lives and the lives of the people we hold dear being publicly threatened, both in our communities and daily at the White House, women of color stepped up to the plate. There was too much on the line to sit back. And in the wake of 2016, a wave of women of color stepped into organizing and electoral politics across the country and right here in Washington state. And these women who were running were some badass candidates. I'm talking about Seattle City Council member Teresa Mosqueda. I'm talking about State Senator Manka Dhingra, Kent City Council member Satwinder Kaur, amazing candidates like Uba Aden and Vitija Ndupure, and many others. And I think Senator Saldana was there too. I see you, send him my love too. But the magical thing about that event wasn't just about the candidates. It was the feeling in the room. And the event was, I think, 90% women, mostly women of color. And I remember we were all crammed into Alia Gupta's house, and it was just so joyful. When I think back to that day, I just remember a lot of laughing and hugging. And 4 years ago, in 2017, I was also pregnant with my daughter, Sahiba. And I remember thinking, this is the future we are building for her, where women support other women, where women of color can be unabashedly themselves and surrounded by folks who understand and support them. And where people don't just say platitudes, but have a personal stake, whether it's time or money, that stake in creating a new face of government. And where we all have a place in a movement to radically shift how we think about politics and who represents us. And at that event, as women of color, we did what we always do. We organized our communities and fought for what we believed in, despite being told to wait our turn, to talk differently, to dress more like white men, to tone down our righteous anger and be less radical. When America Votes is proudly proclaiming with our 2021 slate that it is our time. And we are standing with women and non-binary candidates of color who have built power and will continue to build power with working class, immigrant, and BIPOC communities so we can win real changes in local government for our people. So I'm so grateful for those of you who were there in 2017. I see some of you there tonight, and so grateful for those of you who have joined us since. One day we will all be in a room together, laughing and hugging and feeling that joy in that same room. But I can also feel us creating this feeling in a virtual space. And I also feel us creating that support and those personal commitments to be a part of the movement for the next 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, as long as it takes. And I just want to invite you to take a moment and dream. What will be possible when our stories, experiences, and values are the majority of elected people in Washington state? How will politics evolve? What will our collective power win? And I'd like now to introduce Representative Jamila Taylor, who is part of that future. When America Votes was proud to support and endorse Representative Taylor last year in her successful race. As an attorney, Representative Taylor stood up for those furthest from power, and as a legislator, she stands up for us. Thank you so much for joining us, Representative. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here tonight and to share just a little bit about me and why One America Votes is so important in my life and in the journey of women leadership and elected leaders in our community. Again, my name is Jamila Taylor, State Representative for the 30th Legislative District, which is in South King County in North Pierce County, centered around parts of Auburn, parts of Des Moines, Federal Way, Algona, Pacific, Milton, and some of the surrounding areas. I'm also the chair of the Legislative Black Members Caucus, and I serve as vice chair for the Housing, Human Services, and Veterans Committee, as well as serving on the Transportation and Community and Economic Development Committees. I want to keep you housed, get you easily from place to place, and ensure you have a job to go to. Outside of the legislature, I'm a public interest attorney, small business owner, and a longtime community advocate, and have dedicated my career and years of community involvement to serving diverse populations. My record of leadership spans more than 20 years and ranges from policymaking all the way to program evaluation. I know how the work gets done for the benefit of community. I'm also a daughter and a sister, and I share a household with my mom and my twin brother, who both have chronic illnesses. So we navigate the medical system on a daily basis. And as you can hear, my leadership journey to elective office was a long time in the making, mixed with public community efforts as well as a personal journey. In 2019, I ran for the Federal Way City Council and lost. About a month after that campaign ended, I sought an appointment to become a state representative and lost. Then about a week later, I launched a campaign for the other state representative position, an open seat. Things turned out differently. And during that campaign in 2020, the pandemic changed everything. I had just quit my job, opened a private law practice, and I had a very tough decision to make. Quit the campaign and return to my old job, or press on to a completely uncertain future. I took the risk for community. And what kept me going through the campaign was that there are so many women of color candidates running for office. Because of our deep connections in community, most of us were able to pivot our campaigns to respond to the needs of our neighbors. And on top of that, the movement for Black lives changed the conversation around justice in America. And women of color leaders and candidates for office were already prepared to lead in this conversation and bring the community to action. The Black women candidates for state representatives, they carried this deep focus on marginalized communities into our work in the legislature, and our impact was immediate. We helped pass more than 70 bills that addressed racial equity. We kept focus on the needs of immigrant families. We kept focus on the disparities that working families and women faced over and over. Issues such as early learning, broadband access, healthcare, environmental justice, housing, access to legal aid, rental assistance, and police reform that could not be brushed aside. When women of color lawmakers consistently engage stakeholders of One America Votes in the most important legislation of this session. We need to lift up our progressive women of color leaders in our community. Give them grace to learn. Give them grace to do the good work. Running for office is difficult. It is time consuming. It can be painful. Being an elected official is also challenging. And the work of One America Votes is essential in amplifying their voice and the voice of community. There's an old saying, rising tides lifts all boats. Women of color leaders are the tidal wave of change that returns day after day after day. And One America is the ocean that pushes women of color leaders into excellence as we set policy around the shared concerns about an inclusive small business recovery effort and the long-standing issues around childcare, education, affordable housing, the serious gaps in the safety net, criminal justice reform, healthcare access, and equity. Can't forget about equity. And we hope you will rise with One America Votes and women of color leaders as we center hope and opportunity in the work we do to confront the most pressing issues of today and to truly build a better future for our whole community. Stick with us. Stay with us. Our community needs you. We need you to take us into the future. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you so much for your wisdom and your passion, Representative Taylor. That was amazing. You are amazing. Right now, we're going to transition into conversation rooms. We can't record or live stream that part of this event. So for those of you who are joining us via Facebook live stream, we appreciate you and we look forward to more conversations in the future. And you can also join the breakout room conversations at a Zoom link we're going to share in the Facebook comments. In the meantime, if you are inspired to donate, and how could you not be? These amazing women, donate and support these amazing women. We welcome that. And we will be sharing a link to do so in the Facebook comments. We also welcome your actions, phone banking, text banking, and getting out the vote. See our sign up form also in the Facebook event comments so that you can learn more and you can join us as we lift these women to even greater leadership on a wave of support. Now, we will transition to breakout rooms where you'll be visited by a candidate or two. You'll be able to ask some questions, and you'll also be able to connect with others because that's what this work is all about, the connection. Each group will have a room